by Riverside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Coach Reese, where we are here to have the conversation. How are you?
I'm doing good. All things considered, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. It's been a busy week at work, but I'll throw it to you to do the quote of the day, week.
Oh, so the quote of the day. I I just finished a book that I'll be talking about in my book review. But I started a new book by Anne Hyatt called Bet on Yourself. Anne Hyatt is kind of she used to work with like Jeff Bezos and Marissa Mayer, both really prominent, business leaders in the United States here. And there's so many quotes that I just take away from her. And the book obviously is called Bet on Yourself. But and it's not an exact quote, but she talks about how like learning in the failing. And there's a story in the book about how Jeff Bezos wanted to go look at some land, and she was in charge of booking the trip, and she couldn't book a plane and she couldn't book a car because it's kind of awkwardly weird place. So she booked a helicopter, and that helicopter crashed. And with Jeff Bezos in the helicopter and a couple other people, and I guess Jeff Bezos like superhero saved everybody, like he saved everybody in the crash, pulled everybody out of a river and whatnot. Pretty cool story. But she thought she had killed Jeff Bezos, like for a minute there, like because they're like, the communications came through there, the helicopter crashed, and she had to work with the leaders of Amazon to get what are those things called, memos or whatever you get out there into the public, to just let the world know what just happened. So she had to work with all the senior people to be like, yo, we need to come out with different variations of what might have happened. So she kind of said learning in the failure. She said that she learned more in that experience, professionally, than she did in her MBA or whatever undergrad, knowing how to make decisions while you're failing. I mean, obviously we know now Jeff Bezos is alive, he's still crushing it, but I'm just like, wow, it's hard to do that when you're failing. So how can I do that? How can I, while I'm struggling with something, or while I'm in in my feelings with a candidate rejecting my offer, how can I, or feedback from my boss, how can I psychologically make myself learn from it rather than dwell in it? But yeah, anyways, that was good. She was something about learning in the failure.
Appreciate that. That's where wisdom comes from. It's when you fail in life. Moving to our chat, I feel really good because this has been a journey getting to this point, but I lost 3 pounds this week.
Say what?
But I kept in the process. So
let's go.
I'm excited about that. Same thing, spirit. I am getting in a better place with my spiritual practice, what I'm doing to connect. I'm doing that well. And I'm actually going to start working on something new. So I have a goal. My wife bought me Rosetta Stone for Christmas, and I've been dabbling a little Espanol. And
bueno, hablamos español, pues. Entonces hablamos español.
I said little. Is it or something like little? My goal before this year is to do an entire episode with you in Spanish.
Oh, it warms me up. Whatever I can do to support you, I'm with it. That's awesome. That's great. Let's
So
go.
that is my goal. I put on my day. I am working on my Spanish. That's my new
Dang. You know,
challenge.
you should, on Netflix, there's a lot of novellas. You should watch some novellas on Netflix. That's
I will definitely do that.
tip for learning Spanish. Watch novellas. Or you could also, do you have Duolingo? Duolingo's the best app for
I
that.
like Rosetta Stone. I looked into all these apps and I told her which one
Yeah.
I wanted. I like Rosetta Stone because they have live included.
What? I need to be one of those live tours. Just like, boop, get a notification.
And actually, Rosetta Stone is still the number one within their category. I think Rosetta Stone is
Yeah.
more robust. Like, there are some that I looked into that are like more so like on the go. Like if you're going to go visit country, you want to be able to
Yeah.
translate some.
That's cool.
Rosetta Stone's a little bit more deeper and like more context, and like
Yeah.
you also learn how to in
Ooh. I mean,
Spanish
they
and
better be more robust. They've been in the game for a minute. I remember those
yes,
infomercials. Rosetta
right.
Stone. Like,
When it was on the CD-ROM, you put it in your computer. Now it's on the
yeah.
app. But no, I think for me, Stone, it's more what I want to do because I want to be able, like, be fluent, not just get by.
Yeah. Cool. Might have some visitors
And
here coming
Rosetta
soon,
Stone
just so
helps
you
with
know.
accent. They have an accent thing. Like it records you, like when you speak, it records you, and then it
Right.
gives you feedback on your accent as well. I see the baby. For those who are listening, one of Coach's boys walked into the room and on camera. But we're gonna keep it moving. Yeah, I am about learning Spanish, and then eventually I'll learn French. But that's
Sorry
my
about that.
update.
Sorry about that.
No, the show must go on, and it will go on. I've made a commitment that like I'm gonna edit if necessary, because time which interrupts the because I have a full-time job. So like to all the viewers, you're gonna get a lot of behind the scenes in the scenes,
Behind the scenes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because a lot of work, and this is real life. It's under five.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
You're gonna have three under five. I have one.
Dude, wow, the reminder. Thanks for the reminder. Yep.
No problem. Give your update on your what you're working on with your
You know, I
challenge.
think last week I feel like I was on the struggle bus a little bit, but I think I bounced back. You know, I think the workouts felt good this week. The diet felt good. Still got to button it up a little bit. Still got to button it up a little bit. It's not like I just need a solid week of good workouts and good diet to make me get to the next good
Yeah.
week. But
Yeah, I'm going to air fry me some chicken wings. I think I'm gonna bake them, but I have them marinating
dude,
right
I want
now.
an air fryer. If anyone listening out there can sponsor us with an air fryer, like let's go. I want an air fryer.
So this week you're going to share what you've been thinking about. Prepare to share with the world because we have listeners all over the world.
Man, all over the world. Yeah, you know, this week there's a term that in for a lot of what people maybe people don't know this, but in the in the Christian community, it's called standing in the gap. In the regular world, secular world, you know, it's kind of more like helping mediate through stuff. And I think I've been trying my best to be a good mediator, good engager, a good listener at like issues that come up. There's some issues that came up at work that were affecting, that have been affecting the globe at a global level. And I find myself as I get older, not necessarily being on the side of the majority. And I think that's okay, but I also think that we're living in a world that if you're not part of the majority, you're like the problem. And I'm just trying to learn how to listen to the sides or different angles so that I can be a voice in the chaos for reasoning and inclusiveness and not harshness. So there's a lot of things that have been going on globally, as well as locally here in Portland that have been really kind of challenging me to think like, what do I believe about that? And I think that for me, as I become more of who I'm supposed to become, I'm learning to like just shut the heck up and just listen better so that I can engage better. Yeah, that's kind of what's on my mind. It's kind of an interesting stage, an interesting kind of place to be, because the world's on fire. So yeah, listening and learning how to like give a thought in the midst of like chaos so that the thought is productive and not destructive or separative, like making people divide more. Yeah, that's what's on my mind.
Point. Is it just because what's happening at work?
It's like a combo of everything. It's like the work stuff combined with the global stuff. And sometimes, the stuff at work is interconnected and to the global stuff. And I'm not even like the global stuff, like just some of the national stuff that's happening on certain platforms. I just don't ever, just how I talked about last time with the Juwan Howard, like I would never want to be judged for like my worst actions, right? Like, have that be the thing, right? Forever and ever to be judged on. I think we live in an imperfect world, and I think we're all imperfect. And I think if I can't find grace for those imperfect people, or why would I be able to have people find grace for me? So it's hard because in work you got to make tough decisions, and you have to say something sometimes, and share your opinion sometimes that they might not land as great because everybody thinks that this is the right thing to do. And it's like, well, is it the right thing to do? Really? And so being the person that stands right there in the gap and says, should we do this? Is sometimes the place I find myself in frequently.
Do you feel obligated to be in that space?
I think not by anybody in my company. I just think that my boss encourages me to
like personally. Do you feel like you have to be the person who's like raises the question? Is this the right?
Sometimes I think I do. Sometimes I've learned to pick my battles, and sometimes I will share my thought, or an opinion, and I'll say, hey, and I'll tell my boss, I'm like, man, I'm so glad that you foster an environment that helps us say what we want to say, because I know what I just said maybe isn't like the greatest, most positive thing. And he says, no, man, this is why we're here, because we want people to be able to do this and share. So I think it's more conviction out of anything.
Yeah.
If not me, then who? Right? What if somebody else is too scared or too nervous or too whatever to say something that's similar to what I'm about to say? And so I think about if I become convicted, that tells me something. And not everything convicts me. Like I could care less about I could care less about, if we're gonna design something this or design something that, like, or um the name for the podcast. Like I'm not gonna like, you know, it's more about things that really matter, you know? So yeah, man, I don't know. Maybe I'm
Being
just
deep today.
I mean it's to whom much is given, much is expected, and I think much has been given to me. So what kind of person or leader would I be if I didn't stand up and say, I don't think that's a good idea, or we'll support this initiative, but know that not everybody is in line with this, but we're going to be supportive because we're on the same team.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos has like a thought. It's like agree and move forward, or something. It's one of their pillars at Amazon. It's like disagree to move forward, some stuff like that. So I think there's power in that. But when I was younger, I was like the angry guy, just rah, 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 yelling at people. Now I'm like, it's calculated, which I think is an interesting thing to think about for myself, my evolution, right? Yeah. Too deep? Did I go too deep? Am I in a hole?
No, I think that was good. And I mean, as long as you're staying true to you, like you said, you don't get that type of conviction all the time. And in that space, you felt the need to do this. I think about you is you have a strong moral compass. Do you not agree?
I mean,
Your reaction was
I don't
like,
know.
me? You
I
talking
mean,
about
I
me?
think it depends. It depends. Like, I don't know.
No,
Like,
that's a consistent character
like,
trait.
yeah. I mean, I think so. I think my parents raised me pretty okay. I think there's still things I think sometimes like I'll become like did I tell you the Costco story already? I shouldn't say Costco, but whatever. I went to Costco, and there was three
You
people
just
in
giving
front of
out
me.
all
They
our
were
brand
all
deals away.
people.
We can't get no brand deals because you give them out for free. Name drops.
No, I mean this is a tough one for Costco. There was three people in front of me at Costco. All of them looked to be males. Two of them looked to be Asian, and one of them looked to be like Latino, Hispanic. Long story short, all three men were very, very rudely engaged by the cashier. And I've been at this Costco for like a decade. I've never seen a rude cashier. The cashier, maybe he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Maybe something happened in his life. I don't know. Life happens. It's been a lot going on in this world. But he was super rude to these three older gents. And in my mind, I was going into like old school Enrique. Like if this beep, 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 beep even gets hot with me, he's going to get some words, right? But the reason he was being a punk was because a couple of them, he couldn't scan the guy's cards. It's like a glass now. You got to scan the card and da. And the other one, there's some kind of communication barrier. So I was like, I'm not going to let any of that be an issue with your boy, right? So I put the card on the glass, pow, with my thumb not covering up the thing. And I was like, hello, how are you? Like, kind of. And he didn't even like really acknowledge me either. He was just like, oh yeah, scanned my stuff and I got out. And I was just like convicted. I was like, if someone needs to know. So instead of yelling at the guy, this guy passed me, had a tag manager. I was like, hey dude, you got a minute? You want to walk with me to my car? I gotta get home, but I need to talk to you. He's like, yeah, sure. Walked me to my car. I was like, listen, and I broke everything down to him. Been here for a decade, never seen this before, blah, blah, blah. I was like, unacceptable. I was like, and I don't know, maybe something happened in his life. Maybe his boo broke up with him. COVID, I don't know, who knows? I was like, but this is unacceptable. I was like, in the 10 years I've been here, this is the worst experience I've ever had. And it wasn't even me. It was people that couldn't even defend themselves. And the guy was like, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much for the feedback. Oh, oof, like yes, I will talk with them." I was like, "Listen, I ain't trying to get this guy fired. He needs a job probably, but he needs to know. Like every single person that comes through your like through your little row, you need to make them freaking smile." And he was like, "Oh, like thank you so much." 10 years ago, I would have been like in this guy's face. I would have been like, "Listen, you beep 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 beep." Like you could, like I would have been on one. But now it's more surgical approach is how I do stuff, which is I don't know. It could work sometimes, probably not work sometimes, but I get mad just thinking about the experience, dude. Like I was so pissed.
You're was a very interesting story. I am so, and I guess because if I would verse, I guess this is a bigger conversation about general, but I just
Yeah,
wouldn't go back. Like I wouldn't give the feedback. I just wouldn't go back because with getting feedback in places of employment because to your point, it's like the goal the goal is to give the
yeah,
feedback
100%.
can get better. I just am very nervous
Yeah,
with
I mean, I was really nervous too because I didn't know what he's gonna like ask me to go talk to the guy or whatever. But like, dude, I just could because one of the gentlemen was like the Latino guy, kind of resembled my dad. I was like, that could have been my dad. Like, no, absolutely not. And on top of it, I've seen this cashier a couple times, and he just always kind of comes off as like, I'm just here for whatever. Like, so I'm just like, nope. If you compare him to the other gal, her name is Jennifer, that is always there. It is the
let me
energy.
say this piece. I think one, there's like, hey, you had a bad customer service experience. You gave feedback. I typically don't. I haven't given feedback. I just get very annoyed.
Yeah,
I just don't go back. What I will say is, I do struggle in any arena when you are engaging with someone in a way where they need to do their job and they take it out on you as if you asked me to do my job. Like, how dare you engage with me? Like, there are things that I go, that I used to go grocery shopping, and I'm thinking people will know what this place is. I'm not going to say it, but shopping, and I'm like, hey, can I find the lemon juice? I can never find lemon juice. There's always some random end, shelf. What aisle can I find the lemon juice? And I always get at this particular store. That's not my aisle. I don't know. I'm only in this aisle,
yep,
and I don't.
yep.
To me, oh, is that the end of the? Can you direct me to somebody else who knows what? Like you just left me
Yeah.
hanging, and you put your headphones back in your ear. So I get that. I think the thing
Yeah.
that I appreciate is that you're to the person you were talking to. Maybe he's having a bad day. However, we got to make sure we treat people appropriate. I mean, um, the brown fan, and I have her book right here because I'm currently reading it, and dropping books. One of the things that I appreciate that, and I really want to get this right because I want to get this right because I don't want to miss it because it's such a powerful thing that she says. Okay, I think I'm gonna paraphrase it, but the way she says it is so. She always ends her Instagram or like when she's talking or wherever the case may be, she always ends with saying lines of you have the best day that you can, and if you can't, don't you dare go messing up for somebody else. The part
Yeah,
of like
right.
we all
Yeah.
have bad days, but don't go messing up for somebody else if you're having a bad day. And that's what that man could have done. He could have just like, I'm having a bad day, and he could have kept it together.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I just
any anything else before we move on to
I,
In the Press?
I will add that if you look at if I had a pie graph for my feedback giving, majority of my pie graph would be the exact opposite. Like I consciously look for really good service people, like people who help me out, customer service people, and I will find the manager. I'm like, yo, little Sarah over there, she was amazing. Oh my gosh, can you hire more of her? So my pie graph would be majority good feedback, good things to tell managers. One time I was talking to it looked like a manager, like they seemed like a manager, and I was going off. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she took care of me. She asked me the right questions. She wasn't too pushy. Like, and I bought all these things for my wife. I was like, she's awesome. Because they asked me, like, oh, how was your time today? Right? They were stopping me while I was getting out of there. And I went off on them in a positive way. And they're like, actually, I'm the senior VP regional manager. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, you should give her a bonus or something. Oh, well, thank you so much for. Yeah, we'll do something for her. I was like, hell yeah. So most of the time, that's what I'm trying to look for is like those good leaders. But part of the pie graph is also, yeah, don't like, and it wasn't even me. It was these dudes that were like, couldn't defend themselves. I was like, not today, buddy. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. If you do listen to this podcast, man, I'm sorry, bro. Oh, man.
Okay,
All right.
so
In the
today,
press.
yes, in the press, I am going to. There's that I read called. Cause I was just like, it just I was just doing a search, and I was like, oh, interesting. It is titled, "Here How Long You Should Stay at Your Job You Hate for Your Resume's Sake."
Do you want to open up
So,
this can of worms, Carlton? Are you sure?
so here's the thing. I thought well, this article came out in 2018. Um, it was written by Courtney Kahn. Um, and I agree with a lot that was being said. I'm just curious because this was written back in. I'm just curious
2018,
how
so pre-pandemic.
pre-pandemic. So I'm curious
Okay.
how this applies to now. So here's some. Um,
Okay.
so the biggest thing is that some say you should stay in your job for at least 2 years. But if you like your job and it's unbearable, you should stay for at least 1 year for your. You don't want to have too many gaps. But here's the thing. Uh, they talk about how there is a type of an equation. So, like, if you work somewhere, is the example, then your next job, it wouldn't hurt you if you only lasted 6 months or a year in your next job because there's some longevity. The bigger picture is you don't want a bunch of 6 months, 1 year jobs on your resume, but then that's still industry. So like I still think there's some nuances because if you are a contractor, you're gonna have shorter stints on your resume if on contract jobs. So I just thought this was just interesting. Like, 'cause me being me, I'm all about like being whole and happy, and you will spend the majority of your life at a place of employment if you choose to work every day. And for me, if you truly do not like where you work, if it, like again, previous podcast, I said it has to be mutually beneficial between the employer and the
Mhm.
employee. Because this is the one thing I do know. If the employer hates working with you, they're not going to wait a year or two for your resume's sake. They're not going to say, well, I don't like working with. I've been here 6 months, so we're going to wait another year and a half because we this resume.
Yeah,
And
it
that's the
doesn't work
thing that
both. It
I
doesn't
think,
work both ways.
right, thing that is that's shifted during COVID, and people reassessing is that you like I'm not saying you should quit a job because it's hard. You just don't like it,
Right.
and you're just gonna quit jobs every 30 days. Because
Right.
of grit that you have to push through when things get hard at work, whatever. But
100%.
as long as that job is attached to your purpose or your interest, and you like the type of work you're doing, what I'm saying is, if you're working in a toxic environment, if you have no work-life balance, and that is important to you, if you have a ferocious boss that is making your life e double hell, like I don't think you should 2 years. If you're not in a healthy and I don't think you should wait that long. I think you should first. It's easier to look for a job when you have a job, and I think there are ways you can communicate why you're leaving a job if it's with under a year. I left the job after 10 months, and I was able to communicate effectively why I left after 10 months, and clear to them because they hired me. But I just thought it was a great article, because big about what is the story my resume is telling. I'm about titles on my resume. I'm very abilities. I'm really big about the time that I spent at the place. So I get that strategic thing, and I don't think you should stay anywhere where you're not happy. What are your thoughts about this topic?
I mean, that's a great topic to bring up. I think you're right about a lot for sure. I think we're living through like I I'm going to say the words, but I don't mean the words how they mean to come out. So brace yourself, people. So the good thing about COVID is that it has flipped on its head. Have I talked about the veil yet? Like, like some people have kiddos or some people have different things they believe in, right? That just aren't true, right? Like my kids kind of think about Santa Claus. I don't know what he learned about the Tooth Fairy, but something about the Tooth Fairy. Like my kids think that these things are a thing. They believe it, right? There will be a day when they get older when they won't believe it anymore, right? And they know it's not true, no matter what mom and dad say, right? And then they will start to reproduce the lie to like younger kids, right? COVID has lifted the veil on adults of like, oh, I could do my job at a high level from home remotely and still execute really well on my job. Yeah, I'm not going in. F that. F that. Like, no. Like, so just how Santa Claus isn't true, like the working at an office, needing to be in an office physically to do your job. Again, depends on the industry, depends on the type of work, right? Like, you gotta be a construction worker, you probably gotta be on the job. Except I did see like a virtual excavator that like the dude was controlling in Arizona and the excavator was in Nevada. I was like, that's crazy. But anecdotes. It's just the veil's been lifted. Like we are living in different times. So I think the resume now more than ever is less like when we talk about gaps, like LinkedIn just launched like gaps in like ways to put gaps in your experience because there's reasons why there's gaps, right? A lot of people have, they go on maternity leave. Maybe they take care of a family member that has cancer for a year. Like, there's big reasons. And I think pre-COVID, if you had a gap on your resume, it was like, why? Can you walk me through this gap? Well, yeah, my mom had cancer, bro, and I took care of her. Like, why is that a negative? Why is that a dig, right? So, like, now we're able to engage the gaps openly and holistically so that they're part of the story rather than a hiring manager saying, like, oh, there's a gap. Between 2005 and 2003, there's a gap. What happened there? What does it matter to you? What if something tragic happened, right? So now we're able to like engage the gaps, which I think is good, in a good, wholesome way. And I just think that they're okay. Like I talk to a lot of, happens to be sometimes mothers who want to get back into like designing or project management. And I literally don't think about like, well, you've been out the game for a minute. You know, you had 2 kids. Like, no, I'm like, cool. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do. Let's like connect dots a little bit. But yeah, dude, like the old school way, like pre-pandemic of like how we thought about the resume story, I think is done. There will be a day where the resumes aren't even a thing. Like there will be a day with GPAs, depending on certain situations, won't even be a thing.
Well, I think from an I wonder, something will have to replace resume because then how else would you know someone's experience?
LinkedIn.
But that's resume.
No, but it's not, dude. It's not a resume. Like LinkedIn is not your. Like LinkedIn is part of the anatomy of LinkedIn.
If you're smart about it, some people use profile as their resume because you can send it as a resume when you apply for jobs.
100%. Like yes, it's the anatomy of LinkedIn is part of its resume, but LinkedIn is literally you as an experience to your future employer or people that come see your page. It's literally an experience. Like, so how people feel you, engage you, feel you is all LinkedIn.
That is true.
Opinion.
I do agree with that. But at the last job we worked at, that was the first job I ever had people who were not on LinkedIn in that particular field. Because there's still a good
but look at the field and the industry and the people.
Right. But that's a real thing, though. There are a lot of people who still don't use LinkedIn.
And those people will probably retire in the next 10 years. And they'll be done.
Well,
and they will never need to make a LinkedIn. They'll be not all those people, but like they will realize, they will wake up one day and be like, oh shoot, either I'm gonna retire pretty soon.
You got a moral compass. You out here with the jokes. But what I did want to say when you said GPA is that I do think education, again, depending on the industry, I'm seeing saying bachelor's degree or equivalent, master's or equivalent. Like the days have a degree to get a good paying job, those days I think are actually gone at this point. And what I have realized, and I am thinking from what I've realized is that people, I have friends who don't have degrees and they make more than our friends who have masters.
Yeah. Dude, and my mother-in-law made more money than my father-in-law, and she had like, I think like a bachelor's or just under a bachelor's, and she made buku bucks. Like,
right. And I'm saying like
she had it all right
here.
A
high school diploma, just a high school diploma. I know people who are making more. We have bachelors and masters.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people.
Like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, there's a lot of
Coach. Mr. Carlton.
There are a lot of people who have degrees and they can't even get a job in that. So I do think that's why I'm a big proponent of education. And education forms outside of a traditional bachelor's degree. You go to trade school, you go to barber school, you can go to cosmetology school, you can learn a skill. Like you could do all kinds of things.
But wouldn't you say that that mindset is like in the last maybe 4 years become more of a prevalent, like, oh, I don't need to go to school. I could go be an electrician and make bank. Like I could go be
for that. But I to your point
Right, but
though,
like you don't got to go get your
I think
undergrad.
no. But that's the thing is that like I of trades because I think trade
Yeah, we need them.
people who do trade are like the backbone of our country. Like I just think that like you need
Hundred
electricians, you need
percent.
plumbers, beauticians. Like you, it's so important. I think we overlook it
Right,
because it's not a bachelor's degree. But what I
right.
will
Because
say
the
is
world has conditioned us to think that the way to success is through a bachelor's and then a job and
yes.
then,
But
but it's not.
what I will say about these, one of the reasons that I, in my research and recruiting, one of the reasons why degrees are not being as mandatory, unless it's like something that is really important, it could like you need a degree to be a social worker, right? So like
Yeah,
it really depends on the field, but for the most part, there issue with
yeah,
requiring someone to have a bachelor's degree because not
right.
everyone has the means or the access to a bachelor's degree. Because getting a bachelor's degree is a privilege. Getting a master's is a
Yeah,
privilege. So like issue that is attached to requiring someone to have something that isn't easy to everyone.
I agree. I agree. I agree with that. Yeah,
Do you?
I agree, but say more words. I agree. Like yeah, it's. But I also think that
Are you
in
gonna tell me
like you said,
you gotta tie your bootstraps and figure it out?
no, I think you're right. Like the example of like a social worker, like you should probably get a degree in that, right? Like I would, probably, right? I think we're
Not
talking about
probably. You no. The
you
social worker
should.
is a licensed degree to be a social worker.
Yeah, exactly, right? I think that how do I say this? When you're right
You
about
trying to
like this,
comment on my opinion about it being an equity? Like you can't require a degree for everything because of equity. Like what do you gonna respond to?
no, I mean, like owning a house, right here where I live, like when the people come to fix my problems, like I'm so thankful for plumbers, for electricians, for people that fix the flooring, and I like I interview the people when they're in the house. I'm curious. Like, what'd you do before this? How long did you do that for? How long are you doing this for? And it's always people that didn't go to school, or sometimes most of the time it's people that didn't go to school. They just got into it and they love it, whatever. So I'm super thankful for the people that are in the trades. I wish that there was more focus on the trades so that kids don't got to throw 300 grand in 4 years away and not have a job. I think there should be more onus on the colleges and universities to be like, hey, if you graduate from my school, like you'll probably land a gig. Like 98% chance you land a gig. And like if they don't, like there's it's like the only industry where you can't like get your money back for something that didn't work.
That's
Right?
right.
So I think it's an interesting paradigm. I think like the debate is pretty hot right now in the United States where it's like, oh well, colleges and this and that. Like I think I think education in the next 10 years will evolve a ton. I think my kids won't probably feel education the same way that we went through it. They'll have more options. I hope that in the future that just how LeBron James is like the dude on the court, like I hope we have like teachers that are like paid like LeBron James to teach the kids in ways that are like awesome. But I just think we're going through crazy changes and like right now we're realizing like oh my gosh the old way is kind of whack. We should probably invest in these other things that really matter like the trades and other things, right? But how do you balance the equity part of it is what I struggle with, right? That's what I struggle with.
A you make education a right versus a privilege. Right now in America, education is a privilege. And that's why I think a lot of companies are being more flexible about requiring education if the role is there's a real look. Even in my last two jobs and this job, there's a real conversation. We want to hire X, Y, and Z. Does this person have to have a degree to execute?
Right.
And if they don't, then we will either not put in companies who don't require degrees for any of their roles because their companies function where you don't have to have a degree, but you might need the experience. So it may say bachelor's degree or equivalent plus 8 years of experience. So there's other ways because
Right.
at a certain point, right, you get a career if you don't have it. I will say not having a degree and starting your career is harder than when you are later in your career and you still don't have a degree. Because there comes a point where you hit like 10, 15, 20 years of work experience. A degree at that point is just paper unless you're switching career field. But I'm in HR, we're in HR. If I decide to go back and get a degree in HR, unless it's like HR technology, which is always evolving. I don't know how much more I would learn than what I've learned over the last 15 years of working.
Yeah.
But it's also a paper, which, like, I always tell people who talk to me out there, like, should I go get a bachelor's degree? And I tell them, I was like, are you interested in a education? One, and then are you interested in a master's, or are you interested in going to law school? If you're interested in anything outside of a bachelor's degree, then you should get a bachelor's degree. Uh,
Yeah.
but with that, did you my original question, which was, if you, how long should you stay before you quit? That was the original question. I don't think you answered it.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, you started a whole nother conversation.
I know. I think. I mean, it would need to be depending on the circumstance, but I think what I was trying to go on is like because of the things of that COVID has like opened up about us, like the veil of like how things work now.
Yeah.
Like if you are working in a toxic work environment and it's not healthy, get the heck out because the world is your oyster right now. Like you could work for a company in Florida and be living in Oregon and do your thing. And if somebody asks you, well, why'd you leave that job? There's ways to communicate something that isn't saying, well, beep, 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 this person, So yeah, I think you should get out for sure. I don't think that now more than ever, the time is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like unless you're
I
going
agree.
from job to job to job to job to job to
Yes,
job to
definitely
job,
agree.
and you're just like a flaky person, like
Oh,
then yeah, that's an issue. That's a person thing. But dude, like we see it on LinkedIn all the time. Like I walked out of my job because of this manager, because of this, and I am so much more happy because of it. Let's go. And people on LinkedIn are like, yeah, and then they get a job a week later from somebody that commented on like, hey, hit me up here, boom, boom. I think the manager role or the manager duty is going to be something that is more coveted. There's going to be, I think, in my opinion, there's going to be less manager people, like people managing, less people with the manager duties. It's going to be a more coveted position. And because it's going to be like the people that are actual managers are going to be the outstanding leaders of your organization. That's I think what's going to happen. So yeah, the gap, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be 6 weeks, 6 months. Like get out. There's no need for you to deal with some person's toxicity on you.
that
I've
is
been
true.
there. We've been there. We
Yeah,
have been there. You know.
I agree. And we are going to be over. I need you to do your book review. Tell people what the book, the name of the book, the author,
Oh
and
my God. Okay.
this week. Are you ready to share the quotes?
Yeah, I got the quotes right here, man. Gosh, you're like that teacher that's always like.
I appreciate that. I love teachers.
So Adam Grant, Think Again. I mean, this book is just awesome. So y'all should pick it up. Adam Grant, please sponsor our podcast. One of them is once we hear the story and accept it as sorry, let me start again. Once we hear the story and accept it as true, we rarely bother to question it. Let's go. You know that's fire.
What does it mean to
Because
you?
we are like so many times, like we just believe it. We just believe what is said and we just go with it. We're like freaking sheep, you know? So I think it's always good to have that inquisitive mindset, that little question in your ear, like, huh, is that true? You know? Because I always want to put the little question there, you know? But yeah, Adam Grant's book, Think Again, it's just been a great book to kind of continue to like dwell on and think about and process. Hope I meet the guy one day. Yeah, that's the quote.
All right. Thank you for listening. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
To find us on our platforms, and everyone have a good day or weekend or wherever where you find this podcast.
Or if you're listening or in the future and we're in the past, hope the future's good. Hope that day in the future that you're listening to this right now is good. You know what I'm saying? Hope you're doing something good. Yeah, I just thought about that. That's kind of cool. We got to figure that one out in the future.
Yeah. All right. So, Patty for
Powered
listening
by
again.
Riverside.
Again, I'm Mr. Carlton, and we got Coach Luis. Thank you for listening, and hey, goodbye.